Hey guys, welcome back. This is the story about what if Naruto had the Jougan. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well, it really means a lot. So let's start the what if. Haruno Sakura fidgeted nervously. Why? 1. She was participating in the finals of the Chunin selection exams. 2. Various nobles from villages and towns scattered throughout the land both near and far from Konohagakure, Sunagakure, Takagakure, Kusagakure, Amigakure and Otogakure were in attendance, despite the fact the finalists only represented either Konoha and Suna. 3. Both the Sandaime Hokage and the Yandame Kazekage had taken a vested interest in the tournament. Finally, neither of those Baka teammates of hers had yet to show up. She had not seen either Sasuke-kun or Naruto since the two had left on their respective training trips with Kakashi-sensei and Jiraiya the Gama Sennin. To make matters worse, Naruto had actually been in town the night before, as she had bumped into the weapons mistress, who had not only been with Naruto the entire month, but was the teammate of both Naruto's first and second opponents, provided he beat Hyuga. She still wasn't sure how she should feel about that. On one hand, she couldn't wait to show her boys how much stronger she had gotten, nor could she wait to see how they improved, but the fact she had not seen nor heard from either of them disturbed her. As she didn't know where either of them had traveled to, and she had stayed in Konohagakure no Sato, it wasn't as if she could write to either of her male counterparts during the 1 month they had to train. Naruto had even gone as far as to purposely not see her, something very uncharacteristic of Naruto, even if had gotten over his crush the night before the Chunin selection exams and even had the gall to be late. It's not the fact that she was ignoring the fact that Sasuke was late as well, it was just that after a month alone with Hatake Kakashi, one was bound to pick up one of their sensei's horrid habits. Sakura only hoped that chronic tardiness was about all he adopted from Kakashi. Plus, for whatever reason, Sakura did not like the fact that the weapons mistress, Tenten, had spent practically a whole month alone with her knuckle-headed teammate. Sakura didn't think it was fair that she did get to see either her precious Sasuke-kun or even Naruto the whole month, as the two were a constant source of inspiration for her newfound resolve. Wherever the two of them were, she hoped they were alright, because they wouldn't be when she got through with them. Hyuga Hinata was both happy and worried. She had been released from the hospital a few days prior and had orders not to do anything that would put any strain on her body. She was also the only one to have seen her Naruto-kun recently, which was the source of both her happiness and worry. Happiness that she was able to help him and encourage him, and worry because he had mysteriously disappeared when Kiba approached and still hadn't arrived at the arena. She was also sad and more than a bit jealous. Sad because of what was being said around her. Those Chunins had said some mean things about Naruto, and as much as she desperately wanted to defend the object of both her admiration and affections, she couldn't bring herself to speak out. Even after standing up to Neji, fighting with everything she had and more, she was still a weak little girl. Perhaps not as weak as before, but still weak, nonetheless. If she hadn't thought it improper, she might have given Kiba the biggest hug in his life when he came to Naruto's defense. The Inutame, as Naruto had taken to call him, had changed quite a bit after falling prey to Naruto's genjutsu and, secretly, Hinata thought it was a change for the better. He was still brash and loud, and very confident, but he no longer became overconfident, was less cocky, and his attitude had been somewhat tempered. He had also learned, as she had known for many years, that there was much more to Naruto than he had led anyone to believe. She was sure there was much even she didn't know about him, and she was sure she knew him better than anyone. Years of constant Naruto watching would give anyone much insight on the boy. Of course, this train of thought led her to why she had the feelings of jealousy. Neji's teammate had also seen Naruto in a different light than everyone else and had just gotten back on a 1-month training trip with the 3 blonde genin. Once again, the feelings of insecurity and self-loathing came back. Hinata didn't know much about the weapons mistress other than the fact she was Neji and Ai-san's teammate. She was skilled with various weapon-based jutsu and was definitely one of the best kunoichi genins in Konoha despite having lost to Uchiha Sasuke. She also trained with Naruto regularly in kenjutsu. Tenten was also very pretty in a natural way, not having use for very many cosmetics like either Sakura or Ino, and very self-confident. She carried herself with self-assured grace that Hinata was sure she couldn't hope to even emulate, let alone compete against. First, Sakura, now 10-10. Hinata sighed. She was happy and sad all at the same time, conflicted in every way. Only Naruto could ever make her feel that way, and it frightened and exhilarated her all at once. Now if she could only find the confidence within herself to tell the blonde knucklehead himself. Yamanaka Ino was at a crossroads. She had been greatly confused by her own actions during the preliminary round. She attributed this to the strange phenomenon that had occurred in the Forest of Death that was somehow caused by Naruto and the shock of seeing her former crush, Uchiha Sasuke, turn into some cold-hearted killer bent on torture and misery. Seeing Naruto on the verge of taking that same path with Niji had sparked something within herself. She didn't even realize she had moved before she had her arms wrapped securely around him, begging him not to gouge out the Hyuga's eyes right then and there. Perhaps it was because of how things had rapidly changed in the few months outside of the academy, Naruto awakening a Kekkei Genkai, the mystery and intrigue that sparked her attention, making her notice the finer details surrounding her fellow blonde genin, his fight with Kiba showing everyone, save perhaps Sakura, Hinata and Shikamaru, that they had all grossly underestimated him. Ino was in a state of constantly changing her perceptions whenever she thought of the blonde shinobi. Not to mention, whatever he had done in the Forest of Death had also changed her in some way. She had become much more aware of things around her, as if a part of her had been awakened. Ino had spent most of the last month trying to hone her newfound abilities as they threatened to overwhelm her. Her father, the Hokage and the Tokubetsu Jonin, Ebisu, were great help on helping her in doing so. The feelings of raw, untamed power that she had felt in the last month were overwhelming. Focusing more, she could tell that a good portion was attributed to Sabaka no Gaara. That was not a comforting thought, as Gaara nearly produced as much chakra as the Sandaime, something a mere genin should not be able to do. That didn't even come close though to the murderously crazed presence she felt inside of him. It was stronger than Gaara, and yet held in check by the red-haired boy. If she wasn't intimidated enough by Gaara, the second presence downright terrified her. She worried for Naruto, Sasuke-kun, Shino and Shika, because she honestly didn't think any of the four of them could stand up to Gaara's overwhelming power alone. She became agitated when the Chunin started talking about Naruto as if he was just some loser just barely worthy of a glance, though she knew she had no right to talk because she had done much the same. She was grateful to Kiba when he spoke up for Naruto and was very impressed when the weapon girl, whatever her name was, told her about what Naruto had been up to the past month. Wait. No one had even seen Naruto, and she even said as much. She was more than a little aggravated by the weapons mistress' lack of an answer. Though distraction would come soon enough. Look alive everyone, said Shiranui Genma, the new proctor for the Chunin exam finals. All these people are here to see you. But we can't start just yet. Naruto and Sasuke-kun aren't here yet, said Sakura. I'm sorry, but we've already delayed everything as much as we could. We have to continue on with the tournament, replied Genma. Suddenly, there was a big explosion. An orb of sand twisted around Gaara instinctively, as others covered their eyes as dust and debris was sent flying in all directions. Standing in the middle of the arena just behind the contestants was a huge black and orange ball of flame. Suddenly, from the center of the bonfire, was a flash of teal light that grew with intensity. Another shockwave followed and the fire evaporated, and as the smoke cleared, in the center of the once bonfire was a giant black and orange toad, just barely larger than Gamadaisho, who was dressed in plated armor and had a katana strapped to his waist much like Gamabunta. Sitting on top of the giant toad was another figure with a cocky smirk on his face. Have I missed anything? He asked smugly, his third eye glowing brightly, sending many people in the arena into frenzied, hushed conversations. Judging by the looks of astonishment, Naruto had gotten the effect he was looking for. He looked up at Tenten and her expression was just as smug as his. It was just as they planned. Hayate-sensei and I trained with Jiraiya-sama and Naruto the whole month before the finals of the exam, she told them. Naruto even has a new technique that he came up with, though only Hayate-sensei has seen. He wouldn't show to me either because I didn't let him see my Sashuryu before I used it against the Uchiha, she said with a slight pout. Naruto, where have you been? You're late, shouted Sakura, bashing him on the head. Sakura-chan. He whined, rubbing his head, you're messing up my ultra super cool entrance. Before Sakura could berate him further, Genma interrupted. Now that you're here, we can at least get this tournament started. Where's Sasuke? Asked Naruto. We don't know, he and Kakashi-sensei haven't even gotten back to the village yet, answered Sakura worriedly. Don't worry Sakura, he'll be here, said Naruto reassuringly. The Sandaime Hokage was then joined by the Yandere Kazekage. After what seemed to be a brief conversation, the Sandaime turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending Konohagakure no Sato's Chunin selection exams today. We shall now begin with the main matches, with the 10 who passed the preliminaries. As we are using an 8-man bracket, 2 of our prospective Chunins will be participating in an extra match. So please, everyone, enjoy the matches. As the Sandaime went back to his seat, the crowd started cheering. Genma turned to address the Genin. Before he could say anything, Sakura interrupted. What about Sasuke-kun? She asked worriedly. If Uchiha Sasuke doesn't arrive by the time his match is set to begin, we will have no choice but to have him forfeit his match, said Genma. Sakura's face took on a resigned expression. He'll be here Sakura-kan, said Naruto firmly, though he was just as worried as she was, because if he isn't, I am going to kick his ass. Where are you Sasuke? Alright, now listen up, said Genma, interrupting Naruto's thoughts. Although the landscape is much different than in the preliminaries, the rules are very much the same. There are no rules. Each match will only end when someone gives up or dies. However, should I decided the match is over, I will stop the match. Do not argue with me over my decision. Got it? Now we shall begin the first match, Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Neji. The rest of you go back up to the waiting area. The other competitors turned to leave, though Sakura turned once more and gave Naruto one last worried look before joining the others. Naruto missed this as he was currently glaring at Neji and thanking his toad companion before dismissing him. You wish to say something? Asked Neji with a smug smirk on his face. Naruto thrust his fist out. Hinata gasped, having seen this many times before. The others recognized this as they had seen him do it after the preliminaries. I already told you. For Hinata-chan. I will win. Hinata became wide-eyed and turned an interesting shade of red. Kiba smirked and bumped her with his elbow. She let out a small squeak and couldn't look anywhere except her feet. The others noticed this as well. Don't mind Kibabaka, Hinata, said Ino, it is awfully sweet though, I've never had anyone fight for me, makes me kind of jealous. That did nothing to soothe the Hyuga heiress's embarrassment. Especially since it was Naruto-kun who was fighting for her, the dark, timid weird girl. Then again, he did say he liked people like her, that he liked her. You shall go no further Kazama, said Neji, your fate was decided the moment you decided to interfere in Hyuga business. I'm going to teach you not to make silly promises you cannot possibly keep. Underestimating me again, Neji Tame? Asked Naruto. I never go back on my word, because that's my nindo. I promised Hinata-chan I would kick your ass and damn it, I'm going to do it. Big talk, but can you truly live up to those words? Asked Neji as he easily fell into the Jougan stance, his Byakugan activating, as was apparent by the veins bulging around his eyes. Naruto moved into a wide stance, his left hand ready to draw his sword. His eyes became slitted and his gaze burned into Neji. The first match of the third round of the Chunin selection exams, Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Neji. Fight, shouted Genma, jumping out of the way. As a Hyuga, I can read a person by the slightest details of their body. Just by their facial expressions and body language I can gauge what a person is thinking and feeling. Neji said, I see it in your eyes, total and complete confidence. That will make this match even better, for I will enjoy seeing the look on your face as reality sets in. The look of absolute defeat in your eyes will only make my victory even sweeter. Shut up, said Naruto through gritted teeth. Dust began to swirl around the two competitors and the wind began to pick up. Many in the audience had to cover their eyes. That's all Naruto, said Ino in awe. Was he always this strong? Let's do this, said Naruto, who was still glaring at Neji as the winds died down and the dust began to settle. Pay close attention to this match, Hanabi, said Hyuga Hayashi to his youngest daughter. In their private box surrounded only by members of the branch family, no one in the clan has inherited our Kekkei Genkai stronger than Neji. Your older sister, Hinata, does not even compare to him. He may even be stronger than you. Sama? She asked with wide eyes. However, his opponent is a wilder of the Jougan, said Hayashi. While the boy may have been the dead last, of Hinata's class, the emergence of his Kekkei Genkai makes him a wild card. Tell me, Hanabi, from your lessons, what do you remember about the Kekkei Genkai that had manifested in the Yandere Hokage? It was a dojutsu called the Jougan, one of 3 here in Konoha, said Hanabi. With enough concentration, the Jougan could not only see twice as far as the average Byakugan, but could also pick up sound and see through some surfaces. It can grant the wielder brief bursts of speed and power, though afterwards the wielder may experience bouts of extreme fatigue. The Jougan can slow down the movements of their opponent to allow for quicker reaction time. Because of the Jougan, the Yandere was also able to utilize his most prized and feared technique, the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, as well as the Mortal Flame. It also granted him some telepathic powers as well. But Sama, Yandere-sama was not a member of any clan. He was the only person to ever possess the Jougan Kekkei Genkai. How is it possible for Uzumaki-san to possess it as well? Because Uzumaki Naruto is really Kazama Naruto, the Yandere Hokage's son, said Hayashi to his daughter. Will he be able to defeat Neji-san? Asked Hanabi curiously. No, even with his Kekkei Genkai, Neji's skills are more refined and he has more experience than Kazama. However, he should not be taken lightly. If Neji underestimates Kazama for even a second, he could lose, said Hayashi, watching the two boys intently. Is the Jougan really that strong? Asked Hanabi. Yes and no, Hayashi clarified. It all comes down to the training and the resolve of the wielder. Though members of the council will tell you otherwise, there are strengths and weaknesses to all techniques and abilities, even those of the Hyuga clan. Like both the Jougan and the Sharingan, the Byakugan has many strengths and few weaknesses, and even though they are practically non-existent, they are still there. Down below, Neji's stance was flawless. Naruto was absolutely still. Neji then began to edge towards his opponent. Even with your arm in the condition that it is in, you still wish to fight? Just because you have decided to fight with a handicap doesn't make you noble or brave, but merely a fool and an idiot. Without chakra running through your right arm, you won't be able to mold chakra properly, and I doubt you have mastered enough jutsu with one-handed seals to even be a threat to me. There was a brief glow of Naruto's Jougan as he charged Neji. Neji was more than enough prepared for Naruto's charge as the glow of the Jougan gave away Naruto's actions. Naruto was faster than Neji expected. But as he was only utilizing one arm, Neji was able to easily deflect all the strikes made by the blonde. Seeing an opening, Neji went to hit a tenketsu point in Naruto's right shoulder, only to be blocked by Naruto's bandaged right arm. The sleeve of the robe Naruto was wearing had fallen down to his elbow. It was then that Neji noticed that the bandages were not medical bandages, but sealed bindings. Up and down the length of the bandaged arm was a series of 24 seals. There were two notable ones. The first was on Naruto's hand, which was curled into a fist. The seal was in place to keep it closed. The other seal was on Naruto's forearm, which seemed to be a sort of master seal for the other 22 seals. Naruto pushed Neji's hand back and delivered a palm thrust to Neji's sternum, pushing him back. Neji's eyes narrowed. I've spent the month with 2 seal masters. You didn't think I'd come unprepared, did you? Asked Naruto smugly. As you can see, these bandages aren't for healing, they're for containing, and not even your Byakugan can see through them. The seals prevent a certain amount of chakra from seeping through the bandages and to allow none in. As long as the seals are intact, my arm is immune to your Jougan strikes. Why bother telling me that? All I'd have to do is remove the seals, replied Neji. This only made Naruto smirk. That would be telling, said Naruto. Now, let's see how strong you truly are. Naruto vanished with a blur of motion, coming at Neji with a right hook, but the prodigy evaded the punch, countering with a palm thrust, but Naruto twisted out of the way, not letting his opponent even get the slightest contact with him. Neji was now on the offensive, striking at Naruto from nearly every direction. Naruto blocked another hard Jougan strike with his right arm and jumped back away from Neji. The Hyuga tried to follow, but was stopped short as Naruto drew 3 kunai and threw them at him. Neji caught the first one, dodged the second, and caught the third with the circle part of the kunai, before spinning around and throwing the kunai back at Naruto, who drew his Shuriken no Ryujin and deflected the kunai. He didn't notice Neji throwing the second one that embedded itself inside the blonde genin's stomach. Neji smirked at the look of shock on Naruto's face. Naruto! Naruto Kun, shouted Sakura and Hinata respectively. The other genin who had participated in the preliminaries, as well as the ones who were still in the finals except Gaara and Sachino, had expressions of shock on their faces. Naruto had been showing a level of skill that even Sasuke would have been hard-pressed to match a month prior, but it seemed the distance between Naruto and Neji's skills were still leagues away from one another. Suddenly Naruto's shock turned into a smirk as he poofed out of existence. Now Neji was looking on in shock, as were many others. The kunai Neji had dodged was suddenly engulfed in smoke, and standing behind Neji was a smug-looking Naruto. That's interesting, said Naruto in thought, as if just realizing something. When? Asked Neji. The whole time actually, said Naruto. One of the reasons why Kage Bunshin no Jutsu is a Kenjutsu is because of the chakra requirements it takes to create and maintain one. Most Kage Bunshin are dispelled after one hit, but if you can put more chakra into it, it can take quite a few blows unless it is hit with a killing strike. I was quite nervous when Sakura-chan hit my Bunshin. If she'd have dispelled it, it would have ruined everything. Luckily, I was able to keep the Bunshin, and Sakura-chan only made things more convincing. Sakura blushed in both pride and guilt after hearing Naruto speak about his plan. Meanwhile, the Chunin next to the non-participating rookies and Tenten were having a short discussion of their own. Kage Bunshin, huh? That's a Jonin-level technique, said one of them. You know Kotetsu, most of the few Jonin who know that technique can't use it like that. I heard from some of the Jonin who watched the prelims that he was even able to use Kanashibari no Jutsu, said Kotetsu, an ANBU-level technique. Though to be able to use Kage Bunshin like that is quite impressive, don't you think, Izumo? Not to mention he was able to use it to gauge his opponent's ability. If he keeps showing that much insight for the rest of the match and some of the others, he'd be a prime candidate to become a Chunin, commented Izumo. I told you this would be an entertaining fight, said Kotetsu, totally focused on the match. Regardless, you cannot perform Kage Bunshin anymore with your arm bandaged like that. You'll have to remove at least one of your seals if you plan to use that jutsu on me, said Neji. Naruto's eyes betrayed no slip in confidence. I'm not ready to release any of my seals yet, but I will show you just a little bit of what I can do. Naruto made a cross shape with his arms, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. To say many were shocked was an understatement. He disappeared in a puff of smoke, and when the smoke dissipated there stood 4 Narutos instead of 1. As one, each of the Narutos charged Neji. Let's see you keep up with us now. The first Naruto engaged Neji in a short bout of taijutsu in which he swiftly lost the advantage in, but before Neji could land an incapacitating blow to him, a second Naruto came in to save the first one, his sword slashing between the first 2 combatants. The second Naruto then jumped back as the third and fourth jumped into the fray with their blades drawn. Neji was swiftly and surely evading the deadly blades utilized by the Naruto doppelgangers while trying to figure out which was the true blonde. Just as before, he could not tell which of the blondes were the original or not. The Narutos were careful to attack in tandem and stay out of the range of Neji's Jougan strikes, relying heavily on their kenjutsu. As one of the Narutos were jumping back, Niji did something unexpected. Hakusho, 8 trigrams, empty palm. 10-10, as well as many of the Hyugas in attendance, looked on in shock at Niji's technique, one that none of them had ever seen or heard of before. "To-sama, what technique was that?" asked Hanabi. "Not one ever employed by any Hyuga to date," answered Hayashi contemplatively. "It appears to be a technique of Niji's design, based off of the concept of the Hakusho Kaiten, but that should be impossible as I am the only Hyuga currently capable of using that technique." A burst of chakra erupted from Niji's palm and struck the surprised Naruto in the chest, dispelling him. The shock felt by the remaining 3 Narutos caused just enough distraction for Niji to close in and dissipate another bunshin with a well-placed palm strike. Another Naruto charged in to attack but was easily evaded. Niji ducked as the second Naruto moved in to assist his double. Niji was able to spin around him as the second Naruto tried to swing his blade behind him. Niji took to the air, delivering a solid kick to the face of the first Naruto and a well-placed chop to the neck of the one he flipped over. The first Naruto was sent sprawling onto the ground as his bunshin had been dispelled. Niji slid back into the Jougan stance facing Naruto. "You're definitely a lot better than I gave you credit for by making me reveal my Hakusho," said Niji, "but it doesn't matter. Talent is automatically discerned when you are born. Everything is predetermined at birth." "Do you actually believe the crap coming out of your mouth?" asked Naruto as he stood up to face Niji. "Why do you automatically label things like that?" "So do you mean that just anyone could become Hokage if they work hard?" asked Niji. "So very few are ever made a Kage. Think realistically, those who became Hokage were born to that fate. It is not something you can just do because you want to, because it's already been determined by fate. People are no different. They can only live in the indisputable flow of life. But there is one fate that everyone possesses: death. So what? I'm not going to give up easily," said Naruto defiantly. He then lifted his right fist level with his face. He pulled off the seal that kept his hand closed. His hand opened on reflex and light purple chakra burst from the bindings as if his whole arm up to his elbow was seemingly engulfed in violet flames. It wasn't lost on Niji that Naruto gave a slight wince in pain. Removing the seals, while giving him access to more of his power, also causes him pain, thought Niji as he watched Naruto's next move. Removing the lesser seals would only give him more access to his power, and removing the master seal could possibly injure the both of us with the chakra backlash. Considering those are containment seals, that means whatever power he has in his arm, he cannot control. It would be hazardous not only for us, but others in the stadium if such power was released all at once. "Are you ready to get serious, Niji-tame?" asked Naruto. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." Dozens upon dozens of Naruto Kage Bunshins appears all around Niji, much to the astonishment of people in the audience. Niji prepared for an all-out assault from the blonde genin. He was perplexed when only the front 2 rows of Bunshin drew their blades. The first row then charged at Niji, who artfully weaved and dodged through the Bunshin's defense. "Damn it! We can't catch him off guard at all," said one of the Narutos before he was dispelled as well. Niji was standing in the middle of all the Bunshin with a superior smirk on his face. "Let's see how you like this one," shouted a Naruto as dozens of Narutos took to the air, drawing a few shuriken and throwing them at the Hyuga prodigy, Shihuhapu shuriken from all directions. It was then the inner circle of clones made their move and charged at Niji with their potentially fatal attack. "Give up, Niji-tame!" They shouted in unison, each aiming for non-crippling, non-fatal points on Niji's body. As the shuriken and swords were about to make contact, a shield of chakra appeared around a still confident-looking Niji. Hakusho Kaiten, 8 trigram palms, heavenly spin. He then started spinning, knocking each of the Narutos back and reflecting their shurikens back at their throwers, dispelling all of the Bunshin. "What the hell was that?" asked Naruto as he stood up. He had been one of the Narutos to directly assault the Hyuga prodigy. "Did you honestly think it was going to be that easy, Kazama?" asked Niji with that same damnable smirk. "That's..." Hinata said, breaking through the shock of those around her. "Kaiten. The other genin turned to her for answers. Normally, the timid girl would shy away from such attention, but her shock was just too great at the current moment to either shy away or answer their unasked question. "Niji's ultimate defense," said Tenten, "even without my help he was able to master it. I had thought as much as soon as I saw his Hakusho, which is a variant of the Kaiten. With the Byakugan, Niji can see nearly 360 degrees. He can detect an attack from any direction, and that's where the Hakusho Kaiten comes in. He releases an enormous amount of chakra through his Tenketsu points at the exact moment he is attacked. He intercepts the enemy's attacks with his chakra and then spins to counter his enemy's attack. He applied this concept to the Hakusho by expelling an excessive amount through the Tenketsu points in his hand, extending his reach. Only a master of the Jougan fighting style can expel such an amount of chakra all at once through multiple points of the body, whereas the typical Jonin can only force a small amount through the hands or feet. He can use the centrifugal force of the Kaiten to nullify an opponent's attack. His defense is even greater than Gaara's." "To-sama," began Hanabi, "isn't that Hakusho Kaiten?" Hayashi finished for her, "a secret technique only taught to successors of the Hyuga clan. In other words, only the Hyuga clan main family learned this technique, and he managed to do it without instruction. He is truly amazing. I'd have never have expected him to have so much talent. Naruto had better be careful, because that isn't all Niji can do either," said Tenten cryptically. "There's a reason why he's considered to be the strongest genin in all of Konoha." Naruto sheathed his katana. "So, you mastered it after all. I've wanted to try this out against your ultimate defense since Tenten told me about it." Naruto then made 6 one-handed hand seals with his left hand, which promptly burst into orange and black flames. "Gukatan, Inochi and Ku no Kabushi," he shouted as he charged the Hyuga prodigy. Things seemed to slow down and Naruto came closer to Niji. Naruto thrust his fist forward to punch Niji, who promptly blocked with a palm strike saturated with chakra. Niji blocked his attack and then began to rapidly spin. He became a spinning orb of pure chakra, deflecting the attack from Naruto, sending the three-eyed blonde genin tumbling. "Let's see how far it can go," said Naruto, making the familiar hand seal, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 8 Narutos now replaced the one. "You know what to do," said one directly in front of Niji. They surrounded him at 6 different points. 2 Narutos stood directly in front of him and directly behind him. One of each of those ran a short distance away from their double. "Whatever you are planning, it is fated to fail. It is inevitable that you will lose to me. Why delay your defeat? The harder you try, the more you show your true colors," said Niji. "No doubt you have become much stronger than you had been at the academy, but you will soon realize that all your hard work will not be enough." "Sorry, but I don't hold too much faith in fate," said a Naruto. "You may hold on to it like a crutch, blaming all of your problems as simple destiny, but I refuse to do the same. I will not give in, because if I do, they win. Everyone who has tried to hold me back, but I will become Hokage and do everything in my power to prove everyone wrong and protect this village with every ounce of strength I have, even if I have to beat some sense into you to do it." The 2 Narutos in front of and behind Niji then charged towards their counterparts, who had each cupped their hands. The 2 charging Narutos took to the air using the 2 Kage Bunshin's hands as springboards. The 2 Bunshins were promptly dispelled. The remaining 4 Narutos on the ground then sprang into action. One Naruto stuck the tip of his sword into the ground and charged at Niji, his Jougan blazing. Another went through on handed seals. He charged. The third ran at Niji with his right hand gripped tightly on his sword, while the fourth drew 2 kunai before charging at the prodigy. Above Niji, one of the Narutos went through left-handed, one-handed hand seals as the other got ready to draw his sword. 2 of the Narutos shouted in unison, "Gukatan, Inochi and Ku no Kabushi." The one dragging the sword tip through the ground shouted out, "Samatsu Kaku, rough divide." The other one, who was about to attack with his sword, called out, "Jujin Yaiba Sen, crescent moon blade beam." The blade of the sword had a bright bluish glow as Naruto drew his sword. The final Naruto on the ground threw both kunai and ran through some hand seals, taking a page out of Sasuke's book, kunai kage bunshin no jutsu, and 2 kunai became 2 dozen, as the final Naruto coming from above shouted, Jougan Kiryosu. Niji during this whole time did not move. As each of the attacks were about to come into contact with them, he countered, Hakusho Kaden. Once again, all of the Naruto's attacks were blocked and deflected, sending all of the Naruto's attacks back at each other, knocking them all back, dispelling the 5 remaining clones. The real Naruto had been the one attempting to use the Gukatan, Inochi and Kuno Kabushi from above, and he was sent tumbling on the ground once again, only this time he was a lot more disoriented. You are within range of my divination, said Niji, as Naruto was just beginning to stand, Hakurokuji and Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms. Impossible, said Hayashi in shock. Niji charged at Naruto in a blur of motion that the latter genin could barely follow with his Jougan. Niji hit Naruto simultaneously at 2 different points on his body. 2 strikes. His hands were a blur of motion as he struck Naruto again and again, 4 strikes, 8 strikes, 16 strikes, 32 strikes, 64 strikes. Streams of chakra surged from Niji's fingertips through Naruto's body. Short needle-like beams of chakra could be seen piercing Naruto's body as he flew through the air and landed in a disgruntled, unmoving heap. Damn it! Naruto hissed in pain. He looked up angrily at Niji, his sapphire blue eyes were no longer slitted. I've close all 64 Tenketsu points, you can no longer stand, said Niji smugly as he deactivated his Byakugan. Don't you find it mortifying that you are completely and utterly powerless against a power far greater than your own? It's time you were disillusioned that with hard work you can make your dreams come true. Naruto, said Sakura sadly. She and Lee both had forlorn expressions on their faces as they watched Niji decimate Naruto's offense, which had been much greater than she would have ever have though possible. Lee, on the other hand, was hoping to see Naruto beat Niji, proving that with hard work one could achieve their dreams and goals in time. Lee had been greatly anticipating a match with Naruto as he had started out fairly well, fighting Niji at a near equal level. He even felt a rush of adrenaline surge through him as Naruto not only made Niji use Hakusho Kaden, but the Hakusho as well. Now, however, he was greatly discouraged as each of Naruto's potentially devastating attacks were pushed aside with ease and he fell victim to the infamous Hyuga clan technique, Hakurokuji and Sho. As much as he wanted to believe otherwise, he knew that there was no getting up from this technique, as it was one of the ultimate offensive moves in existence. Hinata began coughing, the excitement becoming too much for her body. Both Kiba and Tenten were doing their best to calm the poor girl who had been on a proverbial emotional roller coaster the entire match. Don't worry Hinata-san, Naruto will pull through, said Tenten reassuringly. Ino, however, was oddly silent as if waiting for something. Ino, are you alright? Asked Choji, munching on his customary bag of chips. Ino? The blonde girl still didn't answer, her face in a thoughtful expression. It's not over, was all she said, her eyes never leaving Naruto and Niji's match. Genma was only moments away from calling the match when Naruto slowly, but surely, began to stand. Niji had flashbacks of his previous match with Hinata the prior month. Naruto still had the same defiant glint in his eyes. It would make his fall all the more devastating as he wasn't only fighting for himself, but for Niji's weak cousin who was nothing more than a soft-hearted annoyance. Niji's normally schooled face that usually held either a smug grin or an emotionless mask was now carrying an expression of complete shock, as Naruto stood before him, smirking, blood trickling from the corners of his mouth. I told you before. I won't give up. I promised Hinata-chan. I will win. Hinata's body could only hold out for so long as she began coughing up blood. Hinata! Kiba gasped. I can help her, I've had training as a mednin, said an ANBU wearing a cat mask. Who are you? Asked Kiba. Just a comrade, the ANBU answered, though Ino gave him a suspicious glance. She could sense deception coming off of him, but she also could sense that whoever he was, meant them no harm. She shrugged it off as him being an ANBU because they had to keep their identities a secret at all times when they donned the ANBU mask. Stop fighting, demanded Niji, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, the end result will still be the same. I will hold no grudge against you. Shut the hell up, said Naruto furiously. Even if you don't, I have one against you. Neji merely glared at the blonde. For someone with eyes that can supposedly see everything, you're blind. Why did you do that to Hinata? Why did you try to manipulate her like that when all she wanted to do was to do her best? It has nothing to do with you, Kazama, said Neji coldly. You did nothing but put her down and labeled her as a dropout, said Naruto angrily. I don't know what happened between the main and branch families of your clan, but teammates like you who treat others like that will always have to deal with me. If you must know, I'll tell you of the Hyuga's fate of hatred, said Neji as he then proceeded to tell Naruto, and those amongst the audience who were listening, about the caged bird seal. During the course of his explanation, he removed his hite, revealing an olive-green design on his forehead. Naruto's eyes widened as the seal on Neji's forehead was revealed to him. Neji was much like him, he realized, having been branded at an early age with a destiny he did not want. Neji then went on telling Naruto about the day Neji had received the seal, when Kyumo had vied for peace, only to double-cross Konoha in an attempt to steal the Byakugan by kidnapping the Hyuga heiress, Hinata, as well as the inner workings of the seal itself. Next, came the death of his father and his reason for despising the main family of the Hyuga clan. Neji's Byakugan automatically activated towards the end of his story due to the emotions running through him. The anger, the sadness, and years of resentment all building towards a pinnacle of frustration and grief. And in this match, your fate was decided when I became your opponent, said Neji. Fate says you will lose, and that I can guarantee. Bullshit, was Naruto's response. I don't know how tough you had it when your dad was killed, but you're full of shit saying fate is predetermined because of what happened back then. Hopeless, said Neji as Ri put his hite back on his head. Naruto's Jougan began to glow as Neji charged at Naruto. Neji attempted a palm thrust, only to have Naruto maneuver around his strike, pushing aside Neji's palm with his bandaged hand before delivering a weak uppercut to Neji. He tried to follow up with a right hook that was easily blocked by Neji, who then countered with a palm strike to Naruto's chin and another to Naruto's sternum. Naruto was knocked off his feet once more. It's over. Dobe. Running away, scaredy cat? Naruto taunted as he stood up once more, hand on his injured midsection. I'm not running, nor will I go back on my word. That's my Nindo. For a brief moment, Neji saw an image of Hinata behind Naruto as he remembered her words to him as he mercilessly beat her down again and again. I do believe I've heard that somewhere. I'm not going to lose to a guy like you who blames everything on fate because it's all a load of crap, shouted Naruto, as he seemed to be catching a second wind. You know absolutely nothing, said Neji scathingly. You have no right to lecture me. People are born with an unchangeable fate. You have no idea what it's like to carry a seal that cannot be removed. A guy like you could not possibly understand. Shut the hell up, shouted Naruto, with a burst of power that sent dust flying in all directions, forcing the crowd to once again cover their eyes. Many of the audience were now on edge, having felt that familiar presence once before. Even Gaara looked alarmed at the sheer power Naruto was consciously generating from his body, as he knew he could not do the same. Temari was alerted to this when she heard the sharp intake of breath from her youngest brother, and she looked back at the blonde genin in shock. No one ever got that reaction out of Gaara. She knew then that the bijou within Uzumaki was a very powerful one indeed. Neji, with his activated Byakugan, looked on in horror as Naruto's Tenketsu points began to forcefully open themselves up as his eyes became slitted once more, only this time they were blood red, just like the color of Naruto's chakra. Neji noticed a fox-like face made of chakra originating from a seal on Naruto's stomach. Naruto's hair became wilder, and the whisker-like birthmarks on his face became wider, overall giving Naruto a more feral look to him. Do you honestly think you're the only person here who has suffered? Ripping his shirt, he revealed the familiar seal that Neji had seen in the Forest of Death, without the kanji for each of the 5 elements on it. I've been ridiculed, beaten, and practically treated as worthless vermin since before I can remember because of the damn seal my own father placed on me when I was not even more than a few hours old. All because people cannot see past their own hatred and prejudice to see what I am not. Try being alone your entire life because of something you could not control. If I had given in to fate as easily as you had, I would either be dead or slaughtering every last one of the villagers for what they've done to me over the years. Many in the audience had the decency to look moderately guilty or alarmed about their past actions and possible consequences. A small frown passed over Gaara's normally emotionless face, though only Temari noticed it. She hoped when it was all over that Gaara took some of the blonde Jinchuriki's words to heart, so that maybe she could have her baby brother back. The boy, who had intrigued her at first, though later she would pass him off as some worthless idiot, had gained a certain degree of respect from the Sunakunoichi for having gone through hell on earth and still remained remotely sane. It still tore at her heart when she remembered Gaara's childhood, what little of it there was, with all of the villagers' open dislike of her brother. All the fear and resentment. The way they shunned and abandoned him. Not to mention the assassination attempts. Each alone weighed heavily on the psyche of a small child, altogether was too much for any one person to have to carry. Not for the first time did she curse her father and what he had forced Chiyoba-sama to do to Gaara and her mother. Do you really think you're so special? What about Hinata-chan? Naruto demanded angrily. She's the heiress of the main family, with all of the expectations that come with it. She's tried so hard to change herself because, like me, no one would acknowledge her. She kept getting up each time you knocked her down, she kept coming back when others would have simply given up, she fought on despite her injuries. So you shut the hell up when you tell me I don't understand, because I do, even better than you do. And then, there's you. The branch family is supposed to protect the main family, yet you did what you did to Hinata in what was supposed to only be an exam. If you weren't fighting against fate then, I don't know what you were trying to do, said Naruto, hypocrite. Niji was seething at the blonde's words, mostly due to the fact he could not dispute them. It doesn't matter anyway. Your fate is already sealed, it will be the same as the one that befell Hinata-sama. Shut the hell up, it's about time I finish this by kicking your ass, shouted Naruto. I'll prove to you that with enough hard work you can do anything, that names and bloodlines aren't everything. Naruto's Jougan began to glow with great intensity and Niji tensed, anticipating the attack. Everything began to slow down as Naruto vanished. Rock Lee's mouth dropped in shock and even Mato Guy was impressed by the speed as he could barely follow it. Niji suddenly doubled over in pain, blood spitting out of his mouth, just a short moment before Naruto reappeared, his elbow driven deep into Niji's midsection. Niji stumbled back, holding his now fractured ribs as Naruto disappeared again. Niji was suddenly launched into the air as Naruto reappeared just seconds after, showing that he had kicked Niji in the face. Naruto then went through a series of 15 hand seals rapidly and drew his sword upon completion, Ten no Kenbu, Jutsuruji Dejiki, Sword Dance of the Heavens, 10 Sword Strike. Naruto flung the Shuriken no Rijin in the air at Niji. The sword then flashed and split into 10, 9 surrounding Niji made completely of purple chakra and 1, the original hovering just above him, having just barely missed the Hyuga prodigy. The 9 surrounding him were rotating all around him in different directions. Power swirled around Naruto and he vanished again, delivering a powerful knee strike to Niji's already injured ribs, before reaching out for the first sword. Naruto did a flip and as soon as he touched down to the ground he jumped at Niji, slashing him through his torso horizontally with the chakra blade, which promptly dissipated. Naruto then grabbed the second one and slashed Niji again on his descent from his left shoulder to his right hip. Again the sword dissipated and Naruto managed to grab the third on his way down to the ground. Naruto shot back up to the ground and grabbed the fourth blade, spinning as he did so to strike a descending Niji with both chakra blades, sending him up again. The third sword sliced through Niji's torso again, while the fourth sliced through his neck, making Niji flip in the air. Naruto grabbed the fifth one from above him and slashed Niji from the front from his right shoulder to his left hip, snatching up the sixth and seventh sword as he descended. Again, Naruto barely touched down to the ground as he vanished again, this time driving the sixth sword through Niji's stomach with his left hand and bringing the seventh one up, striking Niji in the chest. Naruto used the momentum to spin and he reached for the eighth sword with his right hand. Continuing his spin, he struck Niji an 8th time and reached out with his left hand and grabbed the 9th sword, spinning towards the ground. He landed and went into a low crouch, and shot off again with a small shockwave. He reappeared, slashing Niji with the 9th chakra sword, continuing his ascent above Niji where the Shirkan no Rijin still hovered. Naruto grabbed it by the hilt and spun around ready for the killing strike. Instead of completing the technique properly, slicing his opponent in half, Naruto descended with a double axe handle, slamming the hilt of the sword into Niji's shoulder and then sheathed his sword, landing in a low crouch. Niji hit the ground hard, his uninjured shoulder breaking his fall. Niji lied motionless except for the movement of his chest. Genma took a quick glance at Naruto, who nodded. "I declare the winner of this match, Kazama Naruto." Naruto slowly stood up straight, panting heavily. His eyes went back to their normal blue appearance and his wicker marks returned to their normal width. His hair returned to its normal spiky appearance, making Naruto look less feral than when he started the jutsu. "You know, I failed the academy final exam 3 times. I failed because I could not do the one technique that always appeared on the ninjutsu exam. Bunshin no Jutsu was the one technique I could not do, and I still can't. Yet, as you noticed, I can easily create hundreds of Kage Bunshin with little effort. So, shut the hell up about fate being unchangeable. If it is so impossible to fight it, why try to fight it? Why try to do anything? Unlike me, you aren't a dropout. Whatever fate you wish is yours for the taking. I don't know much about the Hyuga's fate of hatred, but when I become Hokage, I'll change the Hyuga way. For your sake and Hinata-chan's, that's a promise. A promise of a lifetime." One by one, people in the audience began to cheer. Naruto looked around the audience, watching everyone cheer for him. All at once he began feeling all of the hope that he never knew he lost, being rejuvenated. Tired as he was, he couldn't help the smile that came to his face as he made his way to the observation platform. Genma approached Niji's still and barely conscious form being loaded onto a stretcher. "You know, even a caged bird over time will try to open its cage with its beak." Genma paused to look at Naruto for a quick moment before glancing at Niji again. They never give up because eventually they want to fly again. As Naruto made it up to the observation deck, he was greeted by both Sakura and Rock Lee. "Naruto, that was incredible," Sakura shouted. "Yes, Naruto-kun, that was a most spectacular and youthful victory," said Lee. "I look forward to our match." Thanks guys. But I think I'm going to take a quick nappy poo," said Naruto, whose Jougan was half closed and had bags under his eyes. "Sakura-chan. Bushy brows. Wake me up when I have to. Fi." He didn't get the last word out as he fell flat on his face, completely unconscious. "Naruto," shouted Sakura as she watched Naruto collapse. She preformed, or at least tried to, a simple diagnostic jutsu Haku had attempted to show her once. However, her concern for Naruto's well-being won out and she couldn't concentrate enough to do the jutsu. "Relax, forehead girl, Naruto's fine, he just needs a bit of rest," said Ino, who was accompanied by Choji. "What are you doing here, Ino pig?" demanded Sakura. "We came to congratulate Naruto and support Shikakuen for his match," said Ino. "I thought you guys were going to be sitting with Hinata and Kiba," said Shikamaru. "We were, but then Hinata started coughing up blood," answered Choji. "Some ANBU guy came by and healed her though, so she's okay. Kiba and that 10-10 girl are both with her now." Now for the second match of the Chunin selection exam 3rd round, Sabaka no Temari vs Nara Shikamaru, shouted Genma. As she had before in the preliminaries, she floated down on her fan. "You better win, Shikamaru," shouted Ino at her lazy teammate. "I planned on it," said Shikamaru with a slight edge in his voice, shocking everyone who knew him. He then casually walked down the stairs with his hands in his pockets, a bored expression on his face. Though Choji wasn't severely hurt, he had spent a week and a half in the hospital after his fight with the blonde Sunanin in the preliminaries. Shikamaru actually trained the entire month and had every intention in defeating his opponent. Sabaka no Temari vs Nara Shikamaru, fight, shouted Genma. Naruto woke up with a small groan. Is it time for my match yet? He asked stretching. No, not yet Naruto, said Choji. Shika just got done fighting that Kunoichi from Suna. There's a 15-minute break before your next match. Oh, so? How long have I been out? He asked. About 4.5 hours, said Ino looking at her watch. Thanks, said Naruto before he fully realized what she said. What? He stood straight up and ran to the balcony, and sure enough Shikamaru was making his way up to the observation deck. What the heck were they doing down there? The whole tournament should be over by now, he said with a frown. Not much actually, commented Sakura. She attacked him with a bunch of wind attacks throughout the whole match, and all he did was hide or try to catch her with her shadow once or twice before he finally caught her. He used a technique that not even me or Choji ever saw him use too, said Ino. I'm actually surprised Shika hadn't given up. I'm not, said Naruto, surprising everyone. He wasn't happy with how she beat Choji, so he was going to do everything he could to beat her. That means he must have actually been training all those times I accused him of being a lazy bum during the entire month, said Ino. Both Naruto and Choji gave her a strange look. Alright, it is Shikamaru we're talking about, so he wasn't training that much, but still it is amazing he actually went out and trained without me breathing down his neck to do it. So where's Sasuke? Naruto asked. He and Kakashi-sensei still haven't shown up, said Sakura in an exasperated tone. Hey guys, said the lazy voice of Shikamaru. Good job Shikamaru, too bad I missed your entire match though, I just woke up, Naruto said sheepishly, his hand scratching the back of his head. You just now woke up? Asked Shikamaru, that must have been some jutsu you used to be out for that long. I'm surprised I actually did it, said Naruto, his cheeks taking on a slight blush. Not even Hayate-sensei has mastered that jutsu. He has to use a modified version that does only 5 strikes, and up until now I've only managed 2. Tenten still has yet to fully form a sword made of chakra yet. So I doubt I could do it again anytime soon. Still, the others were very impressed. Hayate-sensei said the only person he'd ever seen master the jutsu was one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, some guy named Arasoi Kyumo. For the first matchup of the quarter-finals of the final round of the Chunin selection exam. Kazama Naruto vs Rock Lee, shouted Genma. Already people were cheering as Naruto had beaten Neji a few hours prior and Rock Lee was Neji's teammate. The next match promised to be a very exciting one to say the least. Yosh! I cannot wait to face my new eternal rival, shouted Rock Lee excitedly. We will now see who is the true genius of hard work. Everyone's sweat dropped at Lee's excitement. Naruto did the one thing he could think of. Lee. You say something? Lee's mouth literally hit the ground as he then ranted on about Naruto's hip ways that he had inherited from his sensei. This of course, caused everyone to sweat drop a second time. A few minutes later both Kazama Naruto and Rock Lee found themselves standing in the middle of the arena. All 3 of Naruto's eyes were staring straight into Rock Lee's. Hey, Lee, I have to admit, I didn't go all out against Neji. This sent everyone into hushed whispers, including the other contestants. In fact, I think you might want to take off your weights, he said to Lee as he took off his black and robe. I want as good a match as possible. Lee smiled. Very well, Naruto-kun, but just because you beat Neji does not mean I will go easy on you. For the last year it has been my goal to defeat Hyuga Neji in hopes that I can prove my nindo that even one such as myself who cannot use either ninjutsu or genjutsu can become a great shinobi. But now you, another genius of hard work, has defeated my rival. Now you, Naruto-kun, are my new target. I wouldn't have it any other way, said Naruto smirking. Come at me with everything you got. Lee looked up to where his sensei stood. Guy nodded, giving Lee the okay to follow through with Naruto's request. He then pulled down his orange leg warmers that revealed weights that now said hard work. He unlatched them and took them off of his legs, much like he did in the preliminaries. When he dropped them, the craters he made this time were even bigger. Lee then vanished and only a green blur could be seen running around the arena. Lee suddenly rematerialized in front of Naruto, his fist just an inch from the blonde's face. Naruto, to his credit, did not move. Lee then flipped backwards and got into his Goken stance. Naruto smirked and took off his robe, throwing it to the side. He stood straight up, his legs together, his wrists touching out in front of him. Both his wrists and his ankles began to glow as he spread them apart. His arms and legs seemed to be bound together. "Auntie," he shouted at the bonds of energy shattered, and he released a massive amount of chakra. 2 colors of chakra poured out of him. A blue chakra that took the form of a dragon that flew around the stadium and a red chakra that took the form of a certain kitsune. The two then merged together and became a massive toad made completely of purple chakra matching the size of, if not just slightly larger than the legendary Gamabunta. The energy stayed for a few seconds more before receding back into Naruto. "Ready, fuzzy brows?" asked Naruto confidently. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.